Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries Live with Tanya E. Hood. I'm glad I get the chance to see you again. And if you listen to this morning's episode, then you are aware of some of the information that was given. Because some of us, in the beginning of our divorce, had some issues along the way. Hey, like I'm having right now with some of the sound. So let's get that plugged in. Whole thing about going live. But I wanted to give you some other information. This morning, I shared how you should pay attention to certain things when you find yourself in the aftermath of your divorce, having to walk through a journey to get to a better financial position. Because I wasn't fully aware when I went through mine. One of the things that you have to pay attention to, looking at your bank accounts. Those accounts that we use every day, we typically think about those. But there are some accounts that you don't often use on a regular basis, like an old account that you set aside because at one point you were planning and you were like, this is what we're put away for a rainy day. But now you're separating your assets. You're going in different directions. What do you do? Did you really remember where everything is sitting? And here's another thing to truly pay attention to now that you have filed, when things are being signed. And I encourage you, if you have not yet gone before a judge to have your final decree, go before the judge to have some of the paperwork that needs to be signed off that day while you're busy signing everything else. Sign what you need for those accounts so that you can remove your ex-spouse's name. If you need to change the beneficiary on certain elements, have it signed that day because the last thing you want to do is to go back later and have to deal with all of that. It was difficult for me when I had to go back third iteration of back and forth to the courts. Yeah, wasn't fun just because I did not get the signature I needed for motor vehicles. Because I was already going back to court again, I got the paperwork that I needed so that I could just get his signature on the back of the title so that I could transfer what was necessary to be done with that moment. We didn't do it initially because both of our names were on each other's vehicles, typically what you do when you're married. But in the aftermath of our divorce, we could not afford to take away the payment because it still had a payment on it. The car company decided until one of y'all pays us off, both of y'all names have to stay on. Well, that didn't work so well for me because some of you know the story about how I ended up having to pay the extras in the aftermath of my divorce because the other chose not to make the payments. Even though I kept the payments up on a vehicle that I agreed to, I still had to deal with the payments for the other one I no longer had possession of because my name was on it. And when I finally paid off the vehicle that I took responsibility for, I needed to have it outright. I did not want to go back and forth through some issue if I wanted to sell that vehicle, locating the ex to get a signature. Mm-mm. If you can, while you're going before the judge to sign everything else, do this as well. This way, you have the resources that you can use to help build a future. You may need to sell that car immediately to pay some of the debts, to give yourself a new foundation to begin. Because some of you have heard, I didn't have any money in the aftermath of my divorce, just debts upon debts. And then when I finally got the chance to get that car paid off, it then became an asset that I could use. So that's the next thing. Take a look at your assets. What is it that you have as a joint asset with your ex that you need to make certain it's signed in a proper manner? With all of the information that I share you, please seek some legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I am not a financial planner. I'm just a woman that went through divorce and learned a few things that I should have known ahead of time. I didn't. So I'm sharing it with you so that you can get some of this insight to support you along the way. But meet up with some legal professionals that's in the field of what you're working with. Because when I finally turned around the financial situation I was in, I did seek financial advice. I found me an advisor to help me with some investments. Some of the money that I was putting away at this point, because now I had a little bit of money to work with. I found a financial advisor to let me know what I needed to do with how to plan for the future. It wasn't a whole lot that I was working with, but I knew what I wanted. Set financial goals. When you're setting those financial goals, if you can think about them early in the process, before you get the final divorce decree signed, you'll know what you're looking for. You'll also have a better idea of what you need to take in the financial discovery to the courts. Now, let me preface this with those that are making more money, because there may be a situation where your spouse was making more money than you were and while you were married, and now in the aftermath of your divorce, if you're the one that made more money, you're like, okay, I still want to protect myself. When you ask for this information up front, start getting the thoughts together, what's needed, and come out with a fair assessment. Even if you are the spouse that made most of the money, if you are looking at a clear direction to support your spouse, your ex, when they leave because you were the financial breadwinner, get an idea of what their future elements look like. When you show the courts that you are being supportive and you have taken the time so that you're not financially ravaging your ex just because you guys are separating your assets, there's a plan that was put in place. Hey, this is what the future looks like the next couple of years to get them to a position. I'm willing to let these amount of funds be allocated towards that. That lets the courts see that you're fair-minded. And when you make decisions on other financial levels, it supports you as well as the spouse that you were financially supporting. And now you guys are going your separate ways. This is a win-win situation that can exist, but often we let emotions get in our way. And if you're letting emotions get in your way, you don't think well, you don't function well, and you put yourself in a position where later on, where there can and often is, especially if you have children, commingling of funds that have to come back up. So let's talk about financing in the aftermath of your divorce with children. You still have co-pays that you have to go and deal with back and forth with hospital bills. You still have after school activities or expenses that the children may have for the different activities that they're involved in. What does that look like? Who's continuing to pay that? And how much? One of the things that I did, now granted, again, this was not my first go around. This was after several back and forth moments to court where I finally settled on a percentage. There was a percentage that I would pay based off of whatever the bills were medically. There was a percentage that he would pay based off of what we were doing with other expenses like childcare and clothing and other little things, nuances associated with what was happening with those benefits. The big ticket item for me that I wanted to make certain was covered. So I didn't mind if we didn't cover, let's say, baseball camp. I'm just making something up right now. That's okay if you did not make that percentage payment. But if you did make the payment that I was asking for, whatever your percentage was for the medical bills, because we had a child that had special needs that was in and out of the hospital with his health issues, that bill got to be expensive. And to be fair, when we laid down inside of the divorce decree the percentage, it was a less issue about arguing with who was going to pay what. And here's one other thing. When you're looking at the insurance associated with your care, designate, if you know early, and you can define it, who's going to be primary healthcare provider and who will be secondary, so that when you go to the hospital or have these different visits, it's already in place. You don't have to try to figure out, well, which parent is which. Doesn't matter which parent is taking the child to the doctor. You are clear because it was already designated in advance. Those are some of the things that I wish I knew ahead of time. But you know it now. So if you find yourself in a position where you're early in the divorce process and you have not yet gone before the judge, get those things put in place. If you find yourself in a position where it's already over, you've already gone, you may have to do what I did. Go back, get an addendum, get it updated, because that hidden opportunity for your financial assessment, you want to make certain you cover. Because if you don't take the time to pay attention to what your financial journey looks like, Who's going to do that for you? There's not a lot of people that's going to look out more for your financial interest than you will. And be fair. I don't know how much I can stress. Be fair with one another. Yes, it's emotional. The reason you got divorced, various elements, but lots of times it is really emotional when you choose to let a relationship just dissolve like that. Take a few moments, find a rational thought, or one of the things that I shared in this morning's episode, get a mediator. There are lots of times you can solve what's necessary in mediation without having to go before a judge. You can sign all of your paperwork right there in a mediator's room and then have it, you can have a court-appointed person to sign it for you, or if you have a lawyer already, go to mediation with your lawyer, get all of the paperwork signed there, let the lawyer do the filing. You don't have to go before a judge to get everything finalized, but you have what you need in a more level mindset because you got a third party supporting you. That was something that I think had we done early on may have given us a little bit less heartache and saved us a few thousands of dollars. Because getting a divorce is not cheap, especially if you're going back and forth for years in front of the judge. So, if there's anything that I've said today that has resonated with you, like, comment, share. Give me some insight about what you have experienced down in the comment section. That way, we can extend the conversation. And I'm hoping that you have listened to this morning's episode because I shared a little more information. But if you didn't, go back. Go back and listen to it. You can do that right after we're done. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose.